a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. This is our lineup for tonight. What comes to your mind when I mention India, Pakistan and cricket in the same sentence? Well, it is one of the oldest rivalries, and today there is a new chapter in that story which has triggered a question. Will Pakistan boycott the Cricket World Cup in India? What has led to this latest row? Why is Pakistan considering such moves? What lies ahead? This is our top focus tonight.
पाकिस्तान क्रिकेट बोर्ड आईसीसी की फंडिंग पे 50% चलता है और वो जो आईसीसी की फंडिंग है वो 90% इंडियन मार्केट से आती है। सो हमें एक तरह से इंडिया के बिजनेस हाउसेस पाकिस्तान क्रिकेट को चला रहे हैं।
Our cover story tonight is about one of the oldest rivalries in modern day cricket, and whether or not they will still carry on playing against each other. No points for guessing. I'm talking about India and Pakistan. A report set off the cat among the pigeons today. It was published by a Pakistani media outlet. Here it is on your screen. What does it say? Pakistan's cricket governing body, the Pakistan Cricket Board, or the PCB, might not send the men's cricket team to the World Cup next year. The idea to pull out of the Asian Cricket Council is being considered as well. Why is the PCB considering such extreme measures? Well, the reason is a statement and the hosting rights for next year's Asia Cup. Jay Shah spoke out yesterday. He is the secretary of the Board of Control for Cricket in India, or BCCI, also the president of the Asian Cricket Council. Shah says Asia Cup will be held at a neutral venue. Pakistan was supposed to be hosting the tournament next year, but the Indian team cannot travel to Pakistan. Bilateral cricket between the two sides remains suspended since 2008. When terrorists from Pakistan attacked India's commercial hub, Mumbai. Since then, India has made no compromise. Yes, the two teams still play against each other at global events. In fact, India and Pakistan have a match scheduled this weekend at the T20 World Cup in Australia. But the signal from the BCCI is very clear. The Indian team will not travel to Pakistan under any circumstances. And earlier today, the PCB made its displeasure public. They issued a statement. The PCB wants an emergency meeting of the Asian Cricket Board to discuss this. There is a warning hidden in that statement. It goes on to say that this row can impact Pakistan's visit to India for the ICC Cricket World Cup 2023 and future ICC events in India in the 2024 to 2031 cycle. Is that a threat to boycott the World Cup? Let's be honest, boycotting the entire tournament, that to a World Cup, will not be an easy call to make. Some serious money is at stake here. You see, all cricket boards affiliated with the ICC have a share in the revenues generated from events like the World Cup. That is the financial model. ICC hosts the events, the revenue it makes through broadcasting rights, ticket sales and other means gets divided among all the cricket boards. So how much does the PCB make from ICC? I have some estimates. This is from the year 2019. At that time, the PCB was supposed to receive over $11 million from the ICC. In July 2019, the ICC had paid up the first batch. That was about $6.5 million. Let's talk about broadcasting rights now. One of the biggest money spinners for the ICC. How does it split the earnings with the other boards? The current cycle for broadcasting rights started in 2015. It is valid up to 2023, that is next year. The BCCI's share stands at $371 million. The England and Wales Cricket Board, $127 million. Pakistan and the other 6 test-playing nations will be given $117 million. Why do countries like India and England get a bigger share of the pie? Countries like Pakistan getting just a small piece. The fact is, countries like India and England are bigger markets for cricket. They bring in the most number of viewers and the biggest sponsors. So they get the lion's share of the revenue. It's not like test-playing nations like Pakistan are being shortchanged. In fact, they are getting a proportional share of the revenues as well. The PCB chairman, Ramiz Raja, has admitted in the past how Pakistan earns from India's cricket ecosystem.
पाकिस्तान क्रिकेट बोर्ड आईसीसी की फंडिंग पे 50% चलता है और आईसीसी फंडिंग ये होती है कि वो टूर्नामेंट्स कराते हैं और उसके जो पैसे हैं वो अपने मेंबर बोर्ड्स में बांट देते हैं और वो जो आईसीसी की फंडिंग है वो 90% इंडियन मार्केट से आती है। सो हमें एक तरह से इंडिया के बिजनेस हाउसेस पाकिस्तान क्रिकेट को चला रहे हैं और कल को अगर इंडियन प्राइम मिनिस्टर ये सोच लेती कि हम पाकिस्तान को फंडिंग नहीं देंगे तो ये क्रिकेट बोर्ड जो है ये कोलैप्स भी हो सकता है।
Those were some big numbers. A boycott by Pakistan would not only hurt Pakistan's balance sheets, it would disappoint the fans as well. Can Pakistan really afford a total boycott? The world is waiting for the PCB's next move. Let's now talk about the Ukraine war. Israel has found itself in a spot. Ukraine expects defense assistance from Israel. Kiev's logic here is simple. Iran is selling arms to Russia, so why shouldn't Israel step in to help Ukraine? The ball is now in Israel's court. Will it or will it not help Ukraine militarily? These questions have led to an unexpected outcome. The government and the opposition finding themselves on the same page. Both oppose changing Israel's current policy. Both agree to not sending arms to Ukraine. Israel's defense minister told a local media outlet, and I'm quoting, "We are not selling weapons to Ukraine." The opposition leader and former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the decision, quote-unquote, important. Now, in case you are just tuning in, let me give you some context here. It all started with a soundbite, this one.
Today, Ukraine will send an official note to the government of Israel asking to immediately deliver air defense systems and begin quality cooperation so that Ukraine receives the necessary equipment.
Why Israel? Because Ukraine is convinced that Israel's arch-enemy, Iran, is helping Russia. It is a claim that has only been solidified following the Reuters report that we have been talking about. We mentioned it yesterday. It says that Iran will be selling more drones and missiles to Russia. So like I was saying, Ukraine's logic is simple. If Iran is backing Russia, Israel should automatically back the opposing side. Ukraine is already laying the groundwork for this alliance. It has moved to cut diplomatic ties with Iran.
Tehran bears full responsibility for the destruction of relations with Ukraine. I am submitting to the President of Ukraine a proposition to sever diplomatic ties with Iran. We never took an anti-Iranian stance, but after Iran became part of aggressive crimes and Russian crimes on our territory, we are taking a definite and honest position.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend. This has been a long-standing rule in wars. But should it apply to Israel? It's not like Israel has not helped Ukraine in the war. It has, but with humanitarian aid, not military. Ukraine is now seeking a change in position, and it comes at a crucial time. Ukraine has not been shy of asking for help, especially with regard to air defense. The calls have become louder ever since Kiev was attacked, supposedly by Iran-made kamikaze drones. Iran has denied the involvement of its drones, the Kremlin also saying that only Russian weapons were used. Clearly, Ukraine is not convinced.
I thank our partners, all who help us with air defenses and missile defenses. Let us bear in mind that the very fact that Russia has sought help from Iran is an admission by the Kremlin that it is bankrupt in military and political terms.
But goes without saying, the war has taken a rather unexpected turn. For Israel, it will actually be about finding the balance. So far, it has stood on the sidelines, but there are also some in positions of power who believe that Israel should take a stand. Nachman Shai is Israel's Minister of Diaspora Affairs, and this is what he recently wrote on Twitter. The time has come for Ukraine to receive military aid as well, just as the US and NATO countries provide. But this will not be easy. And let me tell you why. Iran and Israel may be enemies, but Israel and Russia are not. The two countries, in fact, share cordial ties. Russia has a large Jewish community. Some estimates say over 1 million of Israel's 9.2 million citizens have roots in the former Soviet Union. What do these developments mean for Israel? Where does it stand? I earlier spoke to Lieutenant Colonel Mordechai Kedar. He is a former senior IDF military intelligence officer. Listen in.
Well, we very possibly might see that the war between Ukraine and Russia broadens. It starts to include European countries, maybe other parts of the world, especially because of the sensitivity of energy and especially gas. And here comes Israel to the equation, because Israel is a gas supplier. And since we see an alliance between Russia and Iran, and as you know, Iran wants to destroy Israel altogether, there is a possibility that in order to ease the pressure on Russia, Iran will open a war here against Israel or against the Israeli gas facilities in the sea. And this is the scenario which we have to be prepared for, and to make sure that Iran has no access to weapons which might broaden the war according to the Russian expectations.
In fact, according to local media in Israel, Israel's Prime Minister Yair Lapid will be speaking to Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba. And this phone call could happen as early as tomorrow. That's the 20th of October. So what are the chances that Israel will change its position vis-a-vis Ukraine? This is what Lieutenant Colonel Mordechai Kedar had to say on this.
Well, it all depends on the results of the elections here in Israel, which will be in less than 2 weeks, November 1st. If the left-wing parties which are now in power, will win the elections, Israel would be very easily be squeezed to succumb to the American, the European dictates to join the war in their side against Russia and against Iran. While if the right wing will win here in Israel, they are much more reliable when it comes to Israeli interests and not to succumb to other interests. And the Israeli right has always a much more, I would say, Israeli-targeted policy. Means a policy, foreign policy, which serves the interests of Israel, not the interests of other powers in the world. And we have our own interests. So this is more or less the difference, and we have to wait with patience until the results of the elections on the 1st of November.
Israel's active involvement could change the situation dramatically. It could put Russia on the back foot. Already, the Russian forces are facing some problems. The commander of the Russian forces in Ukraine has spoken out. He says the situation in Kherson is difficult.
Overall, the situation regarding the special military operation can be described as tense. The enemy does not abandon attempts to attack Russian troops' positions. Primarily, this concerns the Kupiansk, Liman, and Mykolaiv, Kryvyi military sectors. The situation in this direction is difficult. The enemy is deliberately targeting infrastructure and residential buildings, targeting social, economic, production infrastructure.
That's a rare admission by the Russian forces. Kherson was among one of the first big cities to fall back in February, when Moscow had started the offensive. Last month, Russia annexed 4 Ukrainian territories. Kherson was a part of this. In recent weeks, Ukraine has intensified its counter-offensive. The Ukrainian forces are steadily retaking territory. Locals are now being evacuated from Kherson. There are signals that the fighting could intensify anytime.
Soon Ukrainian troops will begin their offensive on Kherson. We cannot exclude shells striking Kherson and part of the Kherson region on the right bank. For the last 2 weeks, we have been insisting on locals evacuating the right bank of the Kherson region. I ask you to interpret my words seriously as a call to evacuate quickly. We won't abandon the city. We shall stand until the end.
Russian proxy officials in the region say they are moving as many as 60,000 civilians. What for? Russia claims Ukrainian forces could shell Kherson. And what is the basis of this? Russia has not shared any specifics. Ukraine has dismissed these claims by the Russian side. They have called the decision to move the civilians a propaganda show. But Moscow is raising the stakes. The Russian President Vladimir Putin has made a move. He has declared a martial law in all 4 territories that he annexed in September: Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. What does that mean? Vladimir Putin said he is giving more powers to his officers in those regions.
In addition, in today's situation, I believe it is necessary to give additional powers to the heads of all Russian regions. A relevant decree has also been signed today. The top officials of the subjects of the Federation must pay attention to implementing measures designed to ensure the safety of people, the security and anti-terrorist protection of critical facilities, and the maintenance of public order.
Martial law effectively means a military takeover of civilian institutions. So Putin's move is likely to empower his troops on the ground. And going by some claims, sweeping security measures could be put in place now. And this includes restrictions on the movement of people and vehicle checks. Meanwhile, the relentless attacks on Ukraine's capital continue. Fresh explosions were heard in Kiev this morning. Reports say these were Ukrainian surface-to-air missiles shooting down Russian bombs. Residents were asked to move to their nearest bomb shelters. And talking about explosions, the investigation into the Nord Stream pipelines is intensifying. The Danish authorities have released their initial findings. They claim the pipelines were ruptured by powerful explosions. Denmark has not blamed any party yet for this, but their findings echo the conclusions of the Swedish investigators. A video has now been released. It shows a massive tear in the Nord Stream 1 pipeline. A robotics company was engaged to shoot the extent of the damage. They sent a drone to the site where the pipe was leaking, and they found at least 50 meters of underwater pipeline destroyed. All signs are pointing towards sabotage. There is suspicion of a Russian hand, but there is no evidence yet of a Russian involvement in these explosions. The Kremlin has already dismissed the Western probe into these leaks.
Still, we can only express our regret that all this international investigation process is taking place in a very closed mode, without access and with no communication with the Russian side, which is a co-owner of this pipeline system. And of course, we have no opportunity to carry out any work and to perform our own investigation.
If the events in Ukraine were not enough, the Nord Stream is quickly becoming the new front in the battle between Russia and the West. And here's another battle that the West is fighting. A battle of narratives, a battle to win new allies, one that it is failing miserably at. Forget new allies, even old friends of the West are ditching it, like Saudi Arabia. First, it refused to ramp up oil production for the European Union, and now it wants to be a part of BRICs, a bloc of 5 major emerging economies, including China and Russia. The president of South Africa saying Riyadh is interested in joining this bloc. And why is that? Our next report telling you.
This is Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of South Africa. On Sunday, he visited the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and made a stunning revelation. Ramaphosa said that Riyadh wants to join BRICs, a bloc of 5 major emerging economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Saudi Arabia wants to be its 6th member. At least that's what Ramaphosa claims. Here's what he said during the visit. The Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman did express Saudi Arabia's desire to be part of BRICs. That's not all. The South African president says Saudi Arabia is not the only country. A couple of others are keen on joining as well. Watch this.
They have a great desire, and they are not the only country that is finding the BRICS family or formation attractive because of what BRICS stands for. And so we did say to them, the BRICS nations are going to be meeting in a summit next year under the chairship of South Africa, in South Africa. And the matter is going to be under consideration. And already a number of countries or nations have been making approaches to each of the BRICS members, and we've given them the same answer, that it will be discussed by the BRICS partners themselves, 5 of them, and thereafter a decision will be made.
So how does one perceive this? Why are so many countries keen on joining BRICS? And what about the Saudis? What's their intention? To answer this, we'll first have to understand the purpose of BRICS. It was established to serve as an alternative to Western blocs, to counter their hegemony in geopolitics and the global economy. So, is Riyadh's bid to join BRICS an attempt to disassociate itself from the West? It surely seems like it, because Saudi Arabia's relations with Washington have hit a new low. Look at some recent developments. OPEC Plus has refused Biden's request to ramp up oil production. It then snubbed Biden's threats with a sharply worded statement. Then, as if to rub salt on injury, an American citizen has been sentenced to 16 years in prison in the kingdom. This was followed by another snub. Saudi Arabia did not extend an invitation to American officials for an investment conference scheduled for later this month. And now Saudi Arabia wants to join BRICS. It all seems to be part of a strategy. Saudi Arabia's push to decouple itself from the United States and ultimately the West. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Our next story is from Hong Kong, where the Chief Executive John Lee delivered his inaugural policy address. Lee unveiled a new visa scheme with the aim to attract overseas talent. Lee says he wants to start a new chapter for Hong Kong. Our next report telling you all about it.
This year, the greatest encouragement was brought to us by President Xi Jinping's visit to Hong Kong to attend the meeting celebrating the 25th anniversary of Hong Kong's return to the motherland.
A speech that starts off like this is bound to be written off as biased, no matter how promising its content may be. John Lee's speech was not too different. Earlier today, the Hong Kong chief executive delivered his inaugural policy address. His focus was on attracting overseas talent. Lee unveiled a new visa scheme. It's called the Top Talent Pass Scheme. It's pretty similar to the one Singapore recently announced. Here's what Hong Kong is proposing. Those with paychecks above 2.5 million Hong Kong dollars or $318,500 a year will be eligible to work in Hong Kong for 2 years. Also eligible are graduates from the world's top universities. They too can pursue opportunities in Hong Kong for 2 years. The timing is not surprising. Hong Kong is battling a brain drain. Some 200,000 people have left in the last 2 years or so. And this is just the official figure. The obvious question is, what happened? The Hong Kong security law, Beijing's obsession with zero COVID. The brain drain is the result of a combination of political unrest and pandemic policies. In 2020, when Beijing passed the Hong Kong security law, many residents left Hong Kong simply because they were scared about losing their freedom or were scared of the uncertainty and the change that awaited them. The vaguely worded law criminalizes secession, subversion, terrorism and foreign collusion without really defining them in detail. What the residents know is that in case they end up charged under this law, they could be staring at life imprisonment. Then came the pandemic. Hong Kong slapped strict entry lockdowns and quarantine policies. At one point, Hong Kong required up to 21 days of hotel quarantine for those flying in. The strict entry restrictions forced many to take extended vacations. Those who could not afford to do so began looking out for alternative jobs outside Hong Kong. By mid-2022, Hong Kong's population had dropped 1.6% year-on-year. Where did Hong Kong's former residents go? Some went to neighboring Singapore, some expats returned home. Many applied for residency in Canada and the UK. Other favorites were Dubai, Japan, South Korea and Thailand. Lee wants to undo this. He announced tax rebates and also relaxed measures for hiring foreigners.
Eligible overseas talents who purchase a residential property in Hong Kong from today and who subsequently become permanent residents upon residing in Hong Kong for 7 years can apply for a refund of the buyer's stamp duty and residential stamp duty if they still own the property.
John Lee became Hong Kong's leader in July. He is a former cop who was hand-picked by Beijing. So it was not at all surprising that Lee could not stop praising the Chinese leadership. Lee's big policy address comes on the heels of Xi's speech at the CCP Congress, where the Chinese president proudly declared that China has achieved comprehensive control over Hong Kong and has turned the situation in the city from chaos to governance. Xi's obvious reference was to the Hong Kong security law, which was the trigger for the brain drain. It's another story that Hong Kong will never admit this. John Lee wants to start a new chapter. But does global talent even want to be a part of this chapter? Do they want to return to this comprehensively controlled Hong Kong? Stock markets have an answer. Hong Kong stocks fell 2% following Lee's speech. That says a lot, doesn't it?
China has blocked another proposal by India and the United States at the United Nations. The proposal was to list Lashkar-e-Toiba leader Shahid Mahmood as a global terrorist, and China has put this on hold. This is the fourth time China has blocked India's move in the last few months. Our next report getting you the details.
The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres is in India. On Wednesday, he paid tribute to the victims of the 26/11 terror attacks in Mumbai. He spoke to survivors of the attack and made a speech.
Terrorism is absolute evil. There are no reasons, no pretexts, no causes, no grievances that can justify terrorism. Terrorism is absolute evil, and terrorism has no room in today's world.
These were strong words by the UN Secretary-General, but are they backed by action? Let's look at what's happening at the UN. India and the US have proposed to list Lashkar-e-Toiba leader Shahid Mahmood as a global terrorist. This would be under the 1267 Al-Qaeda Sanctions Committee of the UN Security Council, but China put the proposal on hold. This is the fourth Indian proposal that China has blocked in the last few months. In June, China blocked the attempt to blacklist Abdul Rahman Makki. Makki is the brother-in-law of Lashkar-e-Toiba head and 26/11 mastermind Hafiz Saeed. The US has designated him as a terrorist. China blocked the proposal at the last minute. In August, China blocked the blacklisting of Abdul Rauf Azhar. Azhar is a senior leader of the terror organization Jaish-e-Mohammed. He had been sanctioned by the US as early as 2010, and the US says that in 2008, Azhar was assigned to organize suicide attacks in India. But that was not enough to stop Beijing from blocking his blacklisting. In September, China blocked the blacklisting of Sajid Mir. Mir is one of India's most wanted terrorists. He has a $5 million bounty on his head. The US placed this bounty for Mir's role in the 26/11 attacks. Makki, Mir and Mahmood all have links to the Lashkar-e-Toiba, the group responsible for the 26/11 terror attacks, the same attacks whose victims the UN Secretary-General paid tributes to. Guterres' speech on combating terrorism sounded great, but all these terrorists have escaped sanctions at the United Nations because China put the blacklist proposals on hold. This calls into question the UN's ability to actually crack down on terrorism. Why is one country allowed to block such moves? Why are Permanent Security Council members above scrutiny? Why should they get a veto? The rejection of blacklisting for political ends hampers the fight against terrorism. It also reveals the structural weakness of the UN in its present form. China's actions should be a wake-up call. They prove that the UN needs reform. The concentration of power needs to end. Certain countries cannot block others from combating terrorism. The UN Secretary-General said it himself.
Fighting terrorism must be a global priority for every country on earth, and fighting terrorism is a central priority for the action of the United Nations.
Bureau Report WION World is One.
Our next story is about Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta. Just a week ago, he lost over 118 million followers on Facebook, briefly. But why? Due to a bug. It affected a host of users globally. The incident triggered questions on how safe Facebook really is. And given how the company's own founder himself became a victim. But despite the security breach, and instead of fixing his own house, Zuckerberg is telling other companies how to operate. Like Apple, a Silicon Valley giant, the largest tech company by revenue and the biggest tech company by market capitalization. Zuckerberg has a problem with how Apple's iMessage operates. According to him, it's less secure and private as compared to WhatsApp. That's right, the CEO of Meta who lost over 100 million followers thanks to a bug, is telling Apple that its messaging service is more unsafe than his own. Could this be more ironic? You see, this statement was not made in private. It was published on Zuckerberg's Facebook and Instagram pages. The image essentially compares iMessage's green and blue bubbles with the private bubble that's available on WhatsApp. And attached is a self-righteous caption. It reads, and I'm quoting, "WhatsApp is for more private and is far more private and secure than iMessage, with end-to-end encryption that works across both iPhones and Android, including group chats. With WhatsApp, you can also set all new chats to disappear with the tap of a button. And last year, we introduced end-to-end encrypted backups as well, all of which iMessage still does not have." This may just be the most scathing criticism of Apple's services, and what's worse, it's coming from the CEO of another Silicon Valley giant. But why did Zuckerberg go public with this criticism? What explains this? What else but business? You see, Apple's messaging platform is quite popular in the United States. It's the third most used platform in the country and is expected to be the biggest in the years to come, thanks to teenagers and college students. And observers say Meta wants to change this narrative in its favor. It wants to cut into Apple's user base and snatch away its customers. According to reports, this same privacy-focused ad will soon appear on television as well, a clear attempt to increase WhatsApp's user base. But the question is, do Meta's claims against Apple really add up? Is its criticism of the company justified? Well, to some extent, yes. Numerous reports have revealed that iMessage is not entirely secure. Neither does it have disappearing messages, nor are its backups end-to-end encrypted. So Zuckerberg's charge is fair criticism. Plus, Apple itself has been quite critical of Facebook in the past. In January last year, this is what the Apple CEO, Tim Cook, had said, I'm quoting, "At a moment of rampant disinformation and conspiracy theories juiced by algorithms, we can no longer turn a blind eye to a theory of technology that says all engagement is good engagement, the longer the better, and all with the goal of collecting as much data as possible." This was seen as an apparent jibe at Facebook, even though he did not name any company. And now Zuckerberg seems to be returning the favor. Only that he couldn't care less about public shaming. And our next story is about mosquitoes. There is finally an answer to a question that a lot of us have asked. Why do mosquitoes have favorites? You know, there are some who get bitten by mosquitoes more often as compared to others. Some get their unwanted attention a bit more than the others. Others are spared the torture. But why does this happen? Well, it seems like your body's smell could be attracting mosquitoes to bite you. At least that's what a new study has found. Before you start scratching your head, wondering what your smell has to do with how often you are attacked by mosquitoes, let me break it down for you. Researchers have found that some people produce a certain chemical on their skin that is linked to the smell that mosquitoes find attractive. Now, we all have our favorites. Clearly, mosquitoes do as well. Our preferences may keep changing over time, but these winged creatures are clear. They stay loyal to their favorites. So if you are attracting mosquitoes more than others, in other words, if you are a mosquito magnet, it's because you have high levels of some acids on your skin. What acids? They are located in the skin's natural moisturizing layer. We all have them, just the quantity varies. Let's tell you about the experiment. It was done on 64 people with random smells, but only those who produce a lot of these chemicals on their skin attracted the mosquitoes, and these acids are then eaten by healthy bacteria on your body surface, which produces an odor, and this becomes a factor to determine how attractive mosquitoes find you. Experts are calling this an important revelation. Mosquitoes that spread diseases like yellow fever, dengue were used for the report. Now, we all like to be favorites, but as far as mosquitoes go, nobody wants to be in their good books. So what's the way out? Well, you cannot really get rid of these acids without damaging the health of the skin. But future studies might provide more answers, and this study is a crucial one in the fight against mosquitoes. For now, stick to the basic ways to protect yourself from these creatures. Cover yourself up as much as you can and use the already existing products which could safeguard you against being attacked by mosquitoes. On to windmills, which have been touted as a green energy option. However, this source of energy could be having a negative impact on birds. And a case in point is Argentina, where Andean condors are getting adversely affected. And to make matters worse, this comes after a 3-decade-long project to repopulate the region with these massive birds. Take a look.
2 young Andean condors were successfully released into the Somoncura Plateau in Argentina. This arid area borders the Atlantic coast in the East Patagonian region. With the addition of these 2 young ones, a total of 66 Andean condors have been released in the region. This gives hope for the future of these vultures in the area. However, plans for a massive wind farm for a green hydrogen project have raised alarm about the future of the 3-decade-long effort to repopulate the area with these birds. The majestic bird is classified as vulnerable to extinction by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature.
The proposal to set up a mega wind farm here would not only damage the protected natural area, but also put the Andean condor into extinction. These birds that we have managed to free have reconnected again with the mountain range of the Andes and with the Atlantic Sea. They have matured and have had their own offspring that live and fly in this place. They would simply die in the blades of the wind turbines, so the condors would become extinct on the Atlantic coast.
Last year, a green energy company had unveiled a plan to invest $8.4 billion over a decade in a project to produce green hydrogen. The government touted this as the largest international investment in Argentina over the past 2 decades. To qualify as green, hydrogen production must be powered using renewable energy. This is where the windmill farm would come in, which would take advantage of the region's strong, reliable winds. But given the environmentalists' concerns, the firm building the wind farm said that it was cancelling the initiative in the protected area.
Faced with the scenario of the existence of the condor and given that the province of Rio Negro will prepare a management plan for the protected natural area, the company has decided to stop the activities. I insist, we have not installed a single mast and we are not in any way working on the plateau.
Despite the company's new position, Rio Negro's province authorities think there is room for development in the protected area. Since the conservation program started 30 years ago, 81 chicks have been born in captivity. 370 condors have been rehabilitated and 230 freed across South America, including Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Chile and Bolivia. Bureau Report, WION. World is One.
Let's now tell you what else made news. Time for Gravitas Global Headlines.
Indian rupee falls to a new record low of 83.02 against the dollar. The currency has been on a downslide in recent months, along with its Asian peers. In the UK, the consumer price index rose 10.1% in September as its cost of living crisis continues to hammer households and businesses. Ethiopia says its forces have seized 3 towns in war-stricken Tigray, the latest major battleground shift in the 2-year conflict as the UN warns the situation is spiraling out of control. A British watchdog hit out at HSBC for advertisements promoting its green initiatives while failing to highlight the bank's contributions to greenhouse gas emissions. Chileans marked the 3rd anniversary of a social outburst, followed by massive protests that led to the installation of a convention that drafted a new constitution, rejected a month and a half ago. A new report has revealed how the Taliban captured, bound and shot to death 27 men in Afghanistan's Panjshir Valley last month during an offensive against resistance fighters. North Korea orders its troops to fire more artillery shells off its east and west coast in response to South Korea's firing of rounds from multiple rocket launchers. Our planet's warming climate could bring viruses in the Arctic in contact with new environments and hosts, thus increasing the risk of viral spillover, according to new research. West Indies beat Zimbabwe by 31 runs in Hobart to keep their Super 12 hopes alive at the T20 World Cup. Alzari Joseph's 4-wicket haul and a 45-run knock by Johnson Charles led the two-time champions to the crucial win. Golden State Warriors began their NBA title defense with a comfortable win over the Los Angeles Lakers. Reigning Finals MVP Stephen Curry scored 33 points, while Lakers talisman LeBron James began his 20th season in the league with a 31-point display.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas, leaving you with Gravitas images. Thanks very much for watching.